All right, guys, let's go over this review. So like I said, if you go just fast forward to the part that you need to know if you're not sure about something, of course the key is in Canvas, and then I'm going to go over these pretty slowly, not as quickly as I do in class, so that if you have a question, then you can just go to that part and it will be thorough on that portion. Okay, so here we go. Now, on this first problem, it is so important that as we go through these problems, you really fully take into account if the total is known for each section and each set of data. In this case, they do not tell us the total number of sixth graders or the total number of seventh graders and eighth graders and so on. So what that means is, because even though sixth grade and seventh grade both have 30% of their grade level doing community service, we do not know those are the same number of students. So you have got to keep number of students separate from proportion of the total. All right, so with that being said, then you can see that grade 12 had the smallest relative frequency, that's proportion, of students in community service. Now, a lot of students wanted to say answer choice C, that the relative frequency of all participating, if you totaled up the students in 6th and 7th, then 60% of the total students in 6th and 7th are participating because they did 30 plus 30%. And so I wanted to come up with an example that explains why that is not necessarily true. Consider this example. Suppose you had 600 students in 6th grade. Well, then 30%, actually I don't think 30% is 200, is it not? Is it 180? So I think that 30% of 600 is 180, not 200, okay? And then if grade 7 has 100 students, then 30% of that 100, I'm going to check that other one, is indeed 30 students. Okay, so yeah, it's 180, not 200, okay? So let's think about it. 180 plus 30 is what? 210? And 210 students is not 60% of 700 students, okay, which is the combined 6th and 7th, okay? 420 is 60% of 700 students. So that did not work out there. Okay, so that's why that C is incorrect. Okay, and on this problem here, you have got to, in each one of these sections, compute the probabilities. The percentage of 5-year-olds who select red or blue. So I took 21 red plus 35 blue and added that out of 100 is 56%. And then for the 10-year-olds who select red or blue, that's 7 students plus 12 students out of 50. And you can see over here that that's 38%. So yes, that 56% is greater than that percent for the 10-year-olds. So I'm not going to go through all of these answer choices, but you can see I have clearly shown you the numbered percentages here. And even for this problem, that's for answer choice C. And then you could see, so I included all of the numbers for each answer choice to disprove the other answer choices. So pause here if you want to study those numbers and where they came from up here in the chart. Okay? All right, number 3. Now, the fact that they told us that this data set has 20 different car models actually does not necessarily indicate us or give us much more information. It gives us a little, because then we would know the number of cars that are in each quartile. And because this is one set of data, I know that 25% of the data is in every quartile. So every quartile has the same number of cars in it. All right. So in fact, that's what this answer choice C says, is there's approximately the same number of car models between Q1 and the minimum, so that's up here in this blue section, as there is from the third quartile to the maximum. Yes, those have the same number of cars in them. Why do those sections look different sized? Because this top quartile, these top, 5 cars vary from 35 to 50 miles per gallon. But this bottom 5 cars go from 15 to 20 miles per gallon. They're less varied. Okay. This next one is just seeing, can you do the proportion of the total? So I just did straight up percent of the 500 to get the number of people. Okay. Wow, this page here is amazing. I love it so much because what it does for us is it references two major components, two major issues that we have during this kind of data set. So what's happening is, we have to keep straight in our mind if we have the information to find out the number of students in each one of these sections, or if we just know the proportion of the high school that is in those sections. So as with this whole test or this whole unit, you have to keep straight the number of items versus the proportion of items. So I'm going to zoom in here to this number 5. I got this from AP Classroom, okay? And so what's happening is the way that the answer choices are worded is they all are asking about the number of students from Central High School in the four-year university category, and the number of students from Liberty High School. So, that could be an issue and a problem. But the reason that is actually allowed in this problem is because in the prompt up above, we are told that Liberty High School has 100 students in the survey that were surveyed. Central High School has 60 students that were surveyed. So we know the total from Liberty and the total from Central. All right. So because we know the total, then I went in and I computed the number of students in each bar. And that's in black in my picture here. So for example, 20% of 100 is why there are 20 students from Liberty High School that went to a four-year university from the Liberty High School sample. Okay, 18 students from the Central High School sample went to four-year university. So you might ask yourself, why is the bar that contains 20 students shorter than the bar that contains 18 students? Well, that is because it's the percent of the sample from Central High School and the percent of the sample from Liberty High School. Okay? All right. So then when we go to these answers below, you can see that I went through and I broke these down. The category four-year university, the number of students from Central was the same as the number of students. Oh, it's not the same. And it's not 10 greater. It's 2 less, right? The number from Central is 2 less than the number from Liberty. So it's 2 less. I'll tell you where they got that answer from of the same. They got it, well, I don't know where they got that from. Okay. And then, the next one and so on. And you can pause now and kind of study my numbers and study the answer choices and why I marked out answer choices A through D. And answer choice E is correct because answer choice E references the 10 students who are undecided from Liberty and the 6 students who are undecided from Central. And it says there are 4 more students from Liberty High School that are undecided than from Central. Okay, and here's what makes this page so interesting is because while number 5 focused on the number of items, the number of students in each bar, and this is side-by-side bar graph, okay? The question down below asked about the relationship between 2 variables. And the 2 variables are what you're going to be doing after high school and which high school you went to. So those are the 2 variables, the plans after high school and your high school you're going to. So then they ask you about the relationship between those. Is there an association? Is there independence? Are they related? And in order to discuss about that relationship between them, you must pay attention to the proportion or the rate at which students from those high school do those things. See, and that is because the reason we have to pay attention to the rate is because they have different totals. Okay? So in this case, so let's just kind of look at this before I even start answering questions down there. I can see that there's a higher rate of students from Central High School that go to a 4-year university than Liberty. And there's a higher rate of students that go to Liberty High School from Liberty High School that go to community college. It is interesting to note that the proportion of students from Liberty and Central High School who go into the workforce is both 20%. Okay? The proportion of the students from Liberty and Central High School who go into the military are both 20%. And finally, the proportion of students who are undecided the proportion of Liberty and Central High School students who are undecided is the same, 10% from each school. Okay. And you see, even though they're different numbers of students, it's 10% from each school. Okay. So that's what I have down here. So the first question asks, overall, do the plans after graduation and the high school attended appear to be independent? Well, in order to be independent, in all of these categories, every single one, if even one of the categories was different, then you would have an issue. But in every single one of these categories, they would have to be the same rate from Liberty and Central High School for the high school to be independent of your plans after graduation. Well, what's happening with 4-year college and community college? The fact that you go to Liberty High School or Central High School affects the rate at which you go to a 4-year university or community college. Therefore, your plans after high school and high school attended are not independent. There is an association, and that's again because the fact that you're from Liberty High School or Central affects the rate at which you go to university or community college. Okay? And then when you give your answers, make sure you use comparative language about the percents. Students that compare Central High School attend a 4-year university at a higher rate than Liberty High School, and then I gave the percents and so on. Make sure you're saying a higher rate, not more or less students. Okay, question B asks about an association. See, I use different language there. And it asks just specifically about four-year university. So, yes, same thing. There is some type of association because the fact that you go to Central makes you more likely to go to a four-year university than if you went to Liberty High School. Okay? And so affects the rate at which you go. You're more likely. Okay. Now, this last one is very interesting. Does the choice of graduates who plan to enter the workforce or the military appear to be related with the high school that was attended? So we are specifically looking at these two sections, and so therefore there is no relationship because the fact that you went to Liberty or Central High School does not affect the rate at which you go into the workforce. 20% of the students from Liberty and Central go into the workforce. 20% of the students from Liberty and Central go into the military. All right, so that's the end. So big deal. So in summary, you can see independent means things are happening at the same rate. The fact that you are one thing does not change the rate, and there is no association between the variables and they are not related. And then the opposite is true for the other section. Okay, so I went over that one quite a bit. So let's take a look. This one will be a little faster. I just determined the range and the IQR for each one and found that in both cases, the range and the IQR on Monday are smaller, are less than, okay, the ones on Saturday. Here was just the type of variables. So the categorical, of course, are those ones that are word categories or labels. Okay, even if they were numbers used as labels. But these numbers are actual measurable and either discrete or continuous amounts. So of the length, speed, height, and drop. This one, pretty basic. It is asking for the IQR. So you're taking Q3, and that's at 19. And I'm subtracting Q1, which is 3. And that's how I get an IQR of 16. Now, this problem here, I think, is actually quite involved. It is actually a lot of math to be able to come to the conclusion that you need. So let's take a look at it. I mean, it's like 5 different probability problems, or 5 different statements that you're having to compute proper probabilities for because they mix up what the denominators are in all those problems. So you have to read very carefully the probabilities or the rates that they are computing and comparing. All right. So this first one says, if the person owns a car, so that means out of the 60 who own a car, he or she is more likely to live elsewhere. Okay, so living elsewhere is 15 out of 60, okay, which is 25%, than to live in the downtown areas. So that would be 10 out of 60. Yes, 25%. So the 15 out of 60 is greater than the 10 out of 60. So that is why that is a true statement. So you may have stopped there, but I usually like to go through the other ones just to make sure that those are not correct. And so what I wanted to show you is that when I went through all of those, and so I'm actually not going to go through it right now piece by piece. You can pause here and compute each one. Like maybe I'll do just 2 more. I'll do parts B and C. B says, if the person does not own a car, so out of the 140 that do not own a car, he or she is more likely to live outside the city. So that's 25 out of 140. And I guess that 25 out of 140 is 17.8%, okay? Than to live in the city, which is these two sections combined. So if I totaled those two sections, I guess it was supposed to be 42.9 and if I totaled those together, then that's much more than the 17.8. So that's not, so that's an incorrect statement because the 17.8 is less than. Okay, and how about this one? C says, the person is more likely to own a car if he or she lives in the city. Okay, so that means out of the 140 living in the city, downtown and elsewhere, so out of the 140 in the city, there's 25 of them that own a car. So that's why I get the 25 out of 70, and that's 17.9% as compared to, okay, let's do the owning a car, or let's see, own a car. Okay, and so then let's do the 35 own a car out of the 60 if they live outside the city. So that should be 35 over 60. So I'm kind of seeing some mistakes in here. I'm going to go and fix those on the answer key later. But anyway, so there's what that was. 35 over 60 is outside. And so that's obviously not a true statement. And so on. And so then you can finish out D and E and see that those are also not true. Okay. Number 11 and 12 are referencing marginal. In fact, you know what? I'm going to stop right there because I don't want these videos to be so much. So that was numbers 1 through 10. And so I'll go ahead and stop on those, going over those numbers 1 through 10, and then I'll start back again at here at number 11 for the next video.